Hello, my name is Sofia Ludwig, and today I'm going to be talking about the structure and function in regards to the brain and the cranial nerves of the brain. So first off, structure is known as a particular complex anatomical part of a living thing, and function is known as the special action or physiological property of an organ or a body part. So structure is important because it allows us to identify the different parts of the human body. Function is also important because it allows us to understand how the body and structures interact. So these two topics work together to give us a better understanding of the body. In order to learn more about this, we're going to be labeling a diagram of the mid-sagittal view of the brain, which I've drawn out here. And not all structures of the brain will be discussed here, just some of the important ones. So first, we're going to talk about some of the lobes of the cerebrum. So first we have the parietal lobe, which is this range here. The parietal lobe is responsible for processing information about temperature, taste, and touch. So moving on to our next structure, we're going to be talking about the thalamus, which is this structure in here. The thalamus is responsible in part for playing a role in memory. Next, we have the occipital lobe, which is also part of the cerebrum. And this structure is located in the back of the brain, and its function is vision, primarily. Next, we have the midbrain, which is part of the brainstem, ultimately. It's this structure right here. And the midbrain, it contains important relay centers for visual pathways, the sites of this section. Next, we have the cerebellum. The cerebellum is located also at the back of the brain, and its purpose is to help control neural circuits. Moving on, we have the medulla oblongata, which is down here. And the function of this structure is to regulate the respiratory system. Following that, we have the pons, which is in the central location here. And the pons is responsible, one of its many functions is regulating bladder control. Moving on, we have the pituitary gland, which is right here, this small structure. And it is responsible for secreting endocrine hormones. Following that, we have the hypothalamus, which typically works with the pituitary gland. Which is right in here. The hypothalamus is also involved in hormone secretion. Next, we have the corpus callosum, which is this band in here. And the corpus callosum allows information to be transmitted very quickly between the right and left hemispheres of the brain. And lastly, we're going to talk about the frontal lobe of the cerebrum, which is this forward section here. And this is in charge of voluntary movement. And one of the lobes that we could not see in this image is the temporal lobe, which is typically on this side, but because it's a sagittal view, you can't see it. So all the information provided from this portion is from the Northern Brain Injury Association of British Columbia. And by understanding the structures of the brain, we can see how their position relates to their functions. So to continue talking about this topic, we're going to move on to the cranial nerves of the brain. So this is the inferior view of the brain. So we're going to start with the first cranial nerve, which is known as the olfactory nerve, which is located up here. And this is responsible for delivering information about smell. Next, we have the optic nerve, which has the central location right here. And the optic nerve functions in transmitting visual information from the retina of the eye to the brain. Next, we have the oculomotor nerve, which also controls eye movement and is located underneath the optic nerve. Fourth, we have the trochlear nerve, and it is responsible for controlling eye movement as well, specifically to help the lens focus, and that's located right here. Next, we have the trigeminal nerve, and is involved in controlling muscles involved in chewing, and you can see it right here and here. Sixth, we have the abducens nerve, which also controls eye movement. It's located a little farther down, closer to the brainstem here. Seventh, we have the facial nerve, which functions in transmitting taste from the tongue to the thalamus. Eighth, we have the vestibular cochlea nerve, which transmits information about hearing and balance. Ninth, we have the glossopharyngeal nerve, which controls salivation in the mouth. 10th, we have the vagus nerve, which regulates the heart, breathing, and digestion in the body. 11th, we have the accessory nerve, which controls muscles in the pharynx. And our last pair of nerves in our 12 pairs is the hypoglossal nerve, which is right here, and it controls muscles in the tongue. So all of this information is provided by Dr. Jill Salady-Schulman of healthline.com. And understanding the structures and position of each cranial nerve is important because it allows us to understand where in the head these nerves serve to function, and the relationship with the structures of the brain allows us to see the connections and function and position of the nerves. So for example, as we learned, the accessory nerve and the vagus nerve play an important part in breathing, and you can see that it's located near the spinal cord. And as we recall, the medulla oblongata, which is this part of the spinal cord, the brainstem, regulates the respiratory system. So this similarity in structure and location allows us to group their function together and see that they have a common function. So this is evident in other parts of the brain as well. But overall, the relationship between structure and function is very important when it comes to understanding the body. And thank you for watching.